We're starting Be'ezras Hashem, the second shiur on the Sefer Al-Agula v'Al-Tmura. We're in the Hakdama, page Ches. The paragraph starting with Lichoira. So just what he said before was that the Sefer is not written for Tzionim. He's not coming to convince them, because it says Dam Ma'ashetashli v'Apikoris. So Chazal say Hani Mili Apikoris Akum Al Apikoris Yisrael Kol Shekain de Pakar Tvei. That if you answer back an Apikoris who's a Yid, then he's just going to become worse. So you're not allowed to answer him. You answer to a guy because a guy might be genuinely interested in finding out the truth about Yiddishkeit. Even if he's Apikoris, he still wants to know what you hold. He's not going to answer back. But a Jew who's an Apikoris, he's just going to be more of an Apikoris and more of a Rasha. So therefore, it's better not to answer them. So the Rebbe says, I'm not writing my Sefer for those kind of people. And I'm also not writing for people who are meshuchad, who are accepting bribes from the Zionists, who are benefiting from them. But rather, I'm writing for open-minded people who want to hear the truth. So now he says like this, V'lichoira, haloshen kol shekain depakar tvei tzarich bir. That why do Chazal say that the Apikoris is going to become worse after you answer him? Dahari b'vadai mayri sheyashiv lo tshuva maspakas. Maspakas. What? Tzarich bir. He says it's talking that you're going to answer him a good answer. It says know what to answer. So we're talking already that you know what to answer, and still we're telling you don't answer an Apikoris Yisrael. And even if you're going to tell me the Apikoris is so stubborn that he's not going to accept what you say, why should he become worse? Okay? Rashi says because this Apikoris, who's a Yid, knows the Torah and he's still kaifer in it. Obviously not talking about a Fraya Yid then, right? Talking about a frum Yid who knows the Torah and he's still a kaifer. He's not frum anymore, obviously, but he was frum, off the derech. That because he knows the Torah, he's going to think about your answer, he's going to come up with an answer to your answer, he's going to come up with a rebuttal, and you won't be able to shlug him up. As we see, that's Ma'asim B'chol Yoim. When you have people who are off the derech, you can't really convince them with proofs. You come to them with proofs, they're just going to argue back and think of more answers.
I think there's an expression in English, so when a wise man argues with a fool, they both wind up sounding like a fool.
Yeah?
I heard that.
Okay.
But you said they like to learn Reveal Moshe. Like, remember I told that professor, you looked him up?
Yeah.
He said in order to be good religious scientists, you have to learn Reveal Moshe to refute it.
Right, exactly. That's Rakefet, yeah. That's an exact example of what he's talking about.
But I guess they don't pass like it. So they don't consider us Apikoris.
Well, the Rebbe wrote, I'm not writing the Sefer for you guys, but Rakefet doesn't care. He read the Sefer anyway, right?
So he doesn't consider us.
Anyway, okay. And these are not
the only, there are other ones who also...
Yeah, that's true.
study Real Moshe.
Yeah. And by the way, it's more than just that he'll Rashi says you won't be able to answer him because he'll always come back with something. It's more than that. It's that the pshat is like this. If an Apikoris never met, let's say, this big Talmud Chacham, let's say someone has the answers to all the kfir questions. Someone has all the answers to defend our emunah. And someone didn't meet with him. So he'll always be able to think in the back of his mind, if I would have met with that Rav or that Tzaddik or whatever, maybe he would have been able to answer me. So I still have a suffix in my mind whether I'm right. Once he meets with him and he goes away and he thinks, aha, I beat that Rav, I know I answered him, I asked him something that he couldn't answer, whatever. So it's the same thing with Zionism. Once someone learns Vayol Moshe and then he says, aha, I answered up everything, that's it, now I'm a real Zionist, right? Mm-hmm. So then, before that, he always had this fear in the back of his mind. Maybe, Satmar was right. But now, he read the Sefer, now he could say, aha, I'm a Zionist. Okay, anyway, let's see how he explains it. So he brings down this very scary Chovas Halvavos. Chovas Halvavos talks about how a person's own seichel could sometimes confuse him. He says like this, Chovas Halvavos zal b'perek Hey mishar yichud ha'maisa. V'zel l'shoinoi. Im yiyeh ha'adam chacham b'das ha'elokim b'toirasai. Yishtadal ha'yetzer lahachnis ha'hefsid alav. So he's saying that the Yetzer Hara has different ways of approaching different people. If the person's an Am Haaretz, then the Yetzer has an easy time. The Yetzer comes to him with taivas and whatever reasons to make him do an aveira, but he doesn't have to convince him to be with logic, because the person's not so smart. He doesn't even know about the Torah. But let's say this person is a big Talmid Chacham, and he's a very smart man. So now the Yetzer Hara has a different job with him. So he says the Yetzer Hara will try to destroy him with arguments, with logical arguments. V'ashibush b'chachmasa, he'll make him mess up in his chachma, uv'maasehu, and in his actions, miderech hatayna v'haraya, he'll bring proofs against him, me'ezet tzad sheyuchal, from any place that you can bring proof. Mina muskal, from logic, v'akasuv, and from the Tanakh, v'hamukubal, and from anything that's mukubal, like Torah Sheba'al Peh. V'yavim moifis al mashi yorehu alav mina moifsim hamavhilim, he'll bring him proofs that are like amazing proofs. They sound like they're really true. They confuse the mind. Asher ein hakdo moisam amitios, but however their premises are not true. Like he'll get you with a false premise. You know what I mean? V'loi toldoisei mechuyavois, and the results of those premises are therefore not necessarily true. If your seichel is clear, your mind is clear, and you're able to think clearly about the proofs, and the way to be careful of false proofs, when things are said and things are disputed, you'll see the flaw in the Yetzer Hara's arguments. Then you'll know the truth, and you'll save your chachma from the having doubts and emunah. You save your own actions from being mixed up. However, if your mind is too weak to be able to defeat the Yetzer Hara's arguments, then the convincing arguments of the Yetzer Hara will be stronger. The arguments of the Yetzer Hara will more powerfully overcome you and more often. And they'll rule over you. They'll surround you. Outside you and inside, in the open and in secret. Yoiser nachutz. Because this is going to work better, because he's coming to you from the chachma, because this guy's the chacham. And he'll lead you on with proofs that you'll rely upon. And once he succeeds in convincing your logic, then he'll go away from you. V'yaz, meaning your logic will go away from you, your seichel will go away. V'yazor boy alecha, and now the Yetzer Hara will rely on your seichel because you're relying on your seichel. So he'll say, now I don't have to do my job so much anymore. I'll let the person's seichel do the job. And because you're relying on your seichel, anything you don't understand. And he'll bring you down to the level where the emes is concealed. The Rebbe is skipping over a few words. The Chovos just says he'll first bring you down a level till you'll have a little bit of sheker mixed into your emes. Then he'll bring down more sheker. Eventually he'll get you to the level where the sheker is complete. Now your chachma will become your enemy. Your seichel will be the cause for your downfall. Woe to those who are wise in their own eyes, and from their own point of view, they're correct. They rejected the words of Hashem. And what is chachma to them? The words of Hashem the ways of Hashem are straight. Tzaddikim will follow them, and the sinners will stumble in them. Meaning the sinners could learn Torah and learn it the wrong way. The The Pirush the Chovos HaLevavos, Ayidei HaTorah Yikashlu. They'll stumble through the Torah itself. V'heim chachamim lahara. They'll become chachamim in the Torah for the wrong direction. V'nemar ki hachachma kishamanhigim oisa al darka. When you use wisdom correctly, tiyeh refuah l'chol madveh. The chachma is a cure to every sickness. Ukeshanoitim ba means sivasta. When you turn away from the proper path, tiyeh madveh koilo. Then the chachma itself, the wisdom itself, becomes a general sickness in the whole body. She'ein la refuah v'lo yarucha. That has no cure. V'al kein nimshel haTorah bo'esh. That's why the Chovos HaLevavos says that's why the Torah was compared to fire. K'mashomra kasuv haloi koid duvarai ko'esh. My words are like fire. Why? Because fire has both things, right? Fire could do good for people, and it could do destruction. It lights up your eyes with its light. K'masha kasuv mitzvahs Hashem bar miras einayim. The mitzvahs of Hashem are like fire. They're like light. They light up your eyes. The sorefes biyakuda misha noitim nisivasa. However, the fire could also burn those who use it improperly. Kamasha Amar Kasuv Kivo Eish Hashem Nishpad. Because with fire Hashem judges people and punishes them. Al Kain Hizayar Shaloi Tite Ashurecha Miderech Avos. Oh, so now what's the solution? Now you're left being very scared, right? The Chovos HaLevavos just told you that sometimes the Yetzer Hara could convince you to do the wrong thing based on your own seichel. So your own seichel will be your enemy, and it will be telling you the wrong thing. So who are you ever going to rely on then? If you don't have your seichel to rely upon, then how do you know what to do? So now the Chovos HaLevavos gives you the secret. Don't turn away from the path of the fathers. Meaning, follow the Messiah, follow your Jewish ancestors, Unesiva Rishonim, and follow the path of the Rishonim, of the earlier Chachamim, El Habedios. In other words, don't go away from the path of the Rishonim, and don't go to Bedias. Bedias means made up things, like Badami Liboy. Don't suspect that your fathers were wrong when they passed down to you what's good for you and what's bad for you. Don't go against their own counsel. What they taught you. Why? There's nothing that you could think of that they didn't think of already. Ad kan. So he's saying basically that if you have all the Gedolim before were against Zionism, let's say before 48, everybody was against Zionism, without exception. Now, all of a sudden, you want to stay different from them? So, no, don't rely on your seichel. Rely on what the Avos passed down to you. And keep in mind that their way is the right way, and whatever you're thinking of now, you're thinking, now it's better for Jews to, whatever, have a Medina. They thought of that too, and they didn't want to do it. The Ramban, Rashi, right, the Chovos HaLevavos, the Rishonim, the Rambam, they all thought of the idea of having a Jewish state, and they rejected it. So if they rejected it, we have to reject it too.
Rashi also?
I'm just saying, like, everybody. No particular, I'm not saying particular names, I'm just saying everybody in the past thought of this already. So if they didn't do it, why are you doing it? That's really the biggest kasha on the Zionists, the religious ones. You tell me, religious Zionists will say, yeah, it's right according to the Torah to have a state. For a very long time, Jews didn't have a state. So there were a lot of great people then. Why didn't they make a state, right? Obviously, there's a reason. Okay. Let's go weiter now. The divrei Chovos HaLevavos elu noikvim biyardim chadrei vatan. These words of the Chovos HaLevavos should pierce our innermost bodies, meaning innermost mind, basically. V'yuvnu, and they should scare us. Like, who knows how far a person could stray if they use their own logic. V'yuvnu divrei Rashi zal mashkasav kol shekin depakar tvei. So now back to the Rashi in Sanhedrin. We said you're not supposed to answer, not be koheres Yisrael, because he's just going to become worse. How's he going to become worse? So Rashi says that sheyesh lo ratzon. He's paraphrasing now. Because this guy has a will, the hypocrite, to become bad. He already decided the derech that he's taking. He decided to be a Zionist. Now that he's a Talmid Chacham, he's going to use his skill in learning Torah to come up with proofs. You won't be able to answer up anything that he says. He'll become even stronger in his opinion because he's going to go bring proofs to be mechazik, to encourage himself. So now he brings a new example of the same thing. Rashi in Parshas Korach, al pasuk Rav Lachem b'nei Levi. So what's going on there is Moshe Rabbeinu told Korach's people, you want to challenge Aaron for being the Kohen Gadol? I'll tell you what you'll do. Everybody Korach had 250 people, and he had Dasan and Aviram. So he said, take yourselves machtois, take yourselves shovels full of ketoris, and come be makriv ketoris and see what happens. And whoever Hashem chooses, he's the one who's the Kohen Gadol, and all the other people are going to die. Okay, so they took the challenge. They said, "Yeah, we'll do it." So Rashi says, "V'loy tipshim hayu." These people, why did they do it? Shkach hisra. Moshe Rabbeinu warned them. Only one of you is going to come out of this alive. The kibul aleim, the kar. They were makriv the ketoris. So Rashi answers, Eloheim chatu al nafshoisam. They were sinning on their own souls, meaning they were like suicidal. They gave up their own lives. Shenemar es machtois hachatoim ho'elu b'nafshoisam. Okay, so the question is, v'lichayra adayin loy bir Rashi zal. Rashi didn't answer the question. Rashi asked a good question, right? He said, why did these people agree to the challenge when they knew only one of them was going to come out alive? Yeah? That was Rashi's kasha. And Rashi's answer is they were suicidal. They're chatoim b'nafshoisim. I don't know if the Rebbe understood it as being suicidal. I mean, maybe he understood it as being chatoim, meaning they were sinners. Okay, for shteitzach, they were sinners, but the question was, they're not just sinners, they're tipshim. They're foolish. Why weren't they makabel what Moshe Rabbeinu said? They were sinners. Sinners is not enough to explain why someone should be so foolish. The answer is, when a person sins, it's not just that he sins because of his Yetzer Hara, he also convinces his logic that he's right. So he's blinded by his own desire to do the Aveira, and that blinds his logic and makes his logic crooked. There's an expression, no carpenter, no the son of a carpenter who can get him unlocked. In other words, take him out of his stubborn point of view. And you can't even convince him of things that are complete foolishness, to leave behind his foolishness. And what was the foolishness of the people of Korach? They didn't think that only one was going to come out alive, right? Moshe said, Aaron will be saved, or one of you will be saved, and the rest will be killed. They didn't hold that way. They held like Korach said. Korach said, Kol ha'eda kulam kedoshim. He said, everybody's holy. Everybody's right to be a Kohen Gadol. Korach really had two arguments that were kind of contradictory. One argument was, everybody's Kedoshim, but his other argument was, I'm the one. I want to be the Kohen Gadol, not Aaron. It was Gaiva, and it was Kina. So it's kind of a mixture of two different feelings here. So these people...
Schizophrenic?
I don't know, but he had two different tainas that came to the fore, different words that he said. But here's the point. The point is that these 250 people who were makriv the carbon, the makriv the ketoris, they were tipshim because they didn't understand that Korach just wanted it for himself. They thought, okay, everybody's kedoshim, and they convinced themselves of that argument by their desire to rebel. Okay.
No, Shabbat
Okay. V'kacha anu roim beinenu. So now we see the same thing today. She'elu ha'meshuchadim l'deyosehem shal tzionim. These people who are bribed, meaning that they're biased towards the Zionists, machmas eza siba, for any reason, meaning that not only that the people who are beshita Zionists, but even people who are, let's say, a Rav in a Zionist shul or Rosh Hashiva, these people that are completely like bought out by the Zionists, they depend on Zionists for income, and their followers are Zionists, they can't really go against it. So he says, Shalo yoil shum hesber. It won't help any explanations, b'divrei tam, any kind of logical reasons. You also
say this in a video, so you could have an answer for everything or something?
The what?
You could have an answer for everything?
The Apikoros is going to have an answer for everything, yeah. Kol shekein the pakar today, yeah. So he says, but here the Samach Mem is doing more than usual in this case. It's not just a regular case of Apikoros. Here the Samach Mem is mamish trying to blind everybody's eyes. That's
and you're writing a book with that little boy in a Sanhedrin, and don't tell me that, my mommy never told me that. And when he says Shema Yisrael, Hashem Elokeinu, Hashem Echad, the story of the Sanhedrin.
Right. So people were blinded by vozner. Anyway, ki b'nisayon zeh talui kol gulasenu v'dus nafshenu b'vias Mashiach tzidkenu. He says that this state is blocking the coming of Mashiach. So the Samach Mem is trying very hard to prevent the state from going under. So in order to get more Jews on the bandwagon, he is helping the Zionists, and he's helping blind people's eyes that they should not realize what's wrong with Zionism. So therefore, what am I writing the sefer for? Only people who are not affected by the trend of the world, and they're not affected by the power of the Samach Mem. They just want to know the truth. For those people, I'm speaking. And I'm hoping maybe this sefer will help for some of them. Just like he says in the Hakdama to Vayol Moshe, he wants to write the sefer, even if you're going to save only one person, it's worth it. It's important in Hashem's eyes to save even one person. Chazal say on such a thing in Bava Basra Pei Tesem Beis. There's a Gemara there about the tricks that people could do with weights and with measures. And it says that if someone has a weight made out of wood, it's not good, and a weight made out of metal is not good, because these things could trick people. And then also the tool that they use to smooth out the top of the measuring cup has to be a certain type of tool, because otherwise he could trick people with it. And the Chazal give the exact reasons for and the exact types of tools that people could use to trick people, and then they say not to use them. So one of the Tanaim says there, Oili im oimar, Oili im loy oimar. Woe to me if I do mention these tools and talk about them, and woe to me if I don't. Because if I do mention the tools, then maybe the tricksters and the ganavim will take my words and they'll say, hey, that gives me a good idea, right? But if I don't tell anybody, then the problem is that the same ganavim are going to say, no, the chacham don't know what we do, they don't know our tricks, so they'll go and they'll do the tricks. So there's no way to get out of it. Either you're going to say it or you're not going to say it. V'hadar pashtu, and they came out in the maskana, oimar, that we're going to say it. Mehai kra, and the reason was because of the pasuk. Ki yesharim darchei Hashem tzadikim yelchu b'am, poishlim yikashlu b'am. The ways of Hashem are good and straight, and the tzaddikim will follow them, the poishlim will stumble in them. So, in other words, you can't hold back Torah, you got to say Torah, and if somebody takes the Torah the wrong way, it's not our problem. So here too, if the rebbe will say the arguments in the sefer and the Zionists use it to become worse, so that's bad. But if the tzaddikim take it the right way and learn from it, then that's good. So since the maskan of Chazal is we say it, and we don't have to worry about what people are going to do with it, that some Zionists are going to walk into the bookstore and buy Al-Gula and read it and come to answer it up, like Rakefet, right? So if that's the maskana, so the Rebbe decided to write the sefer. Inside the sefer, I'm going to speak about this at length. The Rambam says, Soif Dover. Ani ho'ish asher k'shitzikeu ho'inyan v'yetzer lo ha'derech v'lo yimtza tachbula l'lamid ho'emes. So he says, if I find that I'm in a situation that I cannot teach the truth, sheba Allah of moifis, that I could prove to be true, Ella, I can only teach it in one of two ways. In one way. K'sheyawis li'echad me'ula v'lo yawis la'aseres alafim sichlim. Scholim. That I can teach it in a way that's going to be helpful to one good person and bad for 10,000 fools. So what should I do? Should I keep quiet, or should I say the truth and help that one person and put at risk these 10,000 fools? So the Rambam says, "Ani boicher li'amroi li'atzmi v'lo yargish b'gnus ha'am harav hahu." I decide, I do say it, and I don't worry about the 10,000 fools. I don't worry about them. This is really what happened. The Rambam wrote the Moreh Nevuchim, and a lot of people, he's calling them fools, but a lot of people were against what some things the Rambam wrote, and they came out against him. They burned the Sefer. So the Rambam said, I know that's going to happen. He was very well aware of it, but he said, I'm still writing the Sefer to help this one straight-thinking person.
Do people still not learn it today?
But not for that reason. They don't learn it because they say Reb Chaim learned it and told other people not to. I think he told his son, Reb Moshe Solovechik, not to learn it, and Moshe Solovechik followed his command. That's what it's brought down. I don't know, just one example.
Is it on the yeshiva?
It's on the yeshiva bookshelf, yeah.
So everyone learns it?
It's on the shelf, but I don't think too many people learn it because it's not too. The arguments, the philosophical arguments that he brings, are not really well known today. They're more Aristotle's type arguments, so that's why people don't really get much out of it.
On it?
Not that I know of. Okay. I'll save rather that one person from the difficulties that he's in other words, the sfekus and the munah that he has. I'll enlighten his problems. I'll help him until he gets better and he's healed from his doubts and the munah.
Satmar doesn't learn to do that.
I don't know. And from this we can go to our subject. Libi alai davai v'kashal koyach hasabo. So now to our subject of Zionism. He says, the Rebbe says, my heart is pained and aggrieved. V'kashal koyach hasabo, and I have no koyach to bear it anymore. Lirois mashi higia elenu b'matzav anoyer shel ador ha'achroin ikva de Mashiach, to see what has come upon our generation. Asher mizeh pachtu Chazal. This generation before Mashiach, Chazal were very afraid of the ikvus of the Mashiach. They call it the Chevli Mashiach. V'haya mehem she'amru. Some of the Chacham said, "Yesei v'lo yachminei." Let Mashiach come, let me not see him. Hashem Yisbarach. So, and why? The Rebbe is saying pshat because before Mashiach comes,
right?
Yeah, before Mashiach comes, there's going to be wars and things like that. But besides that, there's going to be tests in Emunah, like the test of the Zionists. Hashem Yisbarach yirachim aleinu v'yitem lanu koyach v'oimetz lisbol. Hashem should have mercy and give us koyach to bear it. V'lamoid ala mishmer ad asher yisamchenu ki mois nisanu, until the time comes when Hashem is going to make us happy, like the days that He made us in pain. V'vias Mashiach tzidkenu b'mheira v'yameinu amen. V'hinei b'derech klal hamamit. So now he starts into the subject of Zionism itself and the war, the 6-day war. V'hinei b'derech klal hamamin be'emes b'Hashem Yisborach u'v'toyrasa ekdoisha. By the way, they chose the name 6-day war because they wanted to brag about it, because they wanted to say, look how fast we won the war. So it's really not a good idea to use that name. You mean for us to use the name? Yeah, I think so. I don't know, because it's like a pro-Zionist type of bragging, gaivadik name. Anyway, the entire existence of the state, who neged HaTorah HaKadoshah is completely against the Torah. Asher kein lo haya oid me'olam. No such thing ever existed before. Besides the terrible isser of taking a state before Mashiach comes, of the Shavuos, which is something that you have to give your life not to do. But chutz lazeh, malchus haminis asher kol daseha, the state of Israel's laws, hema ba'avodah zarah, begilui arayis. The laws condone avodah zarah and they condone gilui arayis, uminus, ukfiris, va'akiris hadas, denying the Torah and uprooting the Torah.
How come doesn't say sifchas tomen?
Yeah, I don't know. It's a good question.
Did you say how many babies were aborted since 1948?
I don't know. Rebbe Victor Miller has a piece on that.
Was it more than 6 million?
I don't know, but it's a lot. It's not more than 6 million, but it's more than the number of babies killed in the Holocaust.
Oh wow, really?
I think so. I think Rebbe Victor Miller has such a thing somewhere. I forgot what it is.
That's good to.
Anyway, so v'yein safek. Wait. Bevadai shelo yuchal hamin ba ela hakofer b'chol Torah kula. So it says, besides the fact that any Jewish state, even a religious state, is austere, but even besides that, even if someone doesn't want to agree with that, but this state has laws that are against the whole Torah, and therefore no one could believe in this state unless he denies the Torah. V'ein safek she'ein heter b'shum oifen avur kiyum kol oisam luchat mei li'abed af nefesh achas m'Yisrael. So now he goes to the next step. You're going to tell me that you have a choice. Let's say for example, let's say the Arabs were about to attack, or there was some dispute with them, but you could settle it without a war, and give up the state. So, b'vadai ain't safek. Even if you hold the state, there's no safek. There's no doubt that you can't give up one Jewish life in order to have a state. So he's going in order here. First of all, the state's austere no matter what. Second of all, it has laws that are against the Torah. Third of all, even if you're going to reject number one and number two, and you're going to hold of the state, you're going to be a Zionist, but who said you're allowed to give up even one Jewish life to save the state? It says, "V'chol atzaros v'al milchamas ha'ayumos she'avru al Yisrael shama ha'ya rak b'shvil kiyumam shel oisam lucha." That all the bad things, whatever happened, whatever people were killed during the Israeli wars, and whatever terrorism happened, is all because of that state. V'ilu ha'ya mevatrim oleha, but if they would give up on it, then b'vadai lo ha'ya sham milchamas. There would be no wars there. The tzaros. And then the United Nations would come in and they would make an arrangement that no Jew should be killed. Therefore the Zionists are the ones causing the wars, and they're not the ones saving lives. Alright, so that's basically the same thing he says in Simon Mem Dalet. He's just being, ramas to it here, that the United Nations could have been a solution, and they could have given up the state and saved themselves from the wars. Now it's interesting. We spoke about this when we learned Vayol Moshe in the Hakdama. The Rebbe in the Hakdama of Vayol Moshe says, when he speaks on page Ches there in the Hakdama.
He says this again in Mem Dalet, the same thing.
Yeah, Mem Dalet. So in Vayol Moshe, page Ches in the Hakdama, he speaks about that Mashiach will not come until the state is gone. It says, Ein ben David ba ad sheyich l'malchus hazal Yisrael. Right? It's in Hedron Sadik Ches. And then he says right after that, and we need Rachmei Shemayim, that the state should disappear from Eze Koyach Milmala, from some heavenly power, V'lo al yidei umos, but not through the nations, because if it will come through the nations, if it will come through the Arabs, then there'll be Jews killed. That's what the Rebbe says. So, in another place, in a few places actually, in Divrei Yoel, Rebbe speaks about the same idea, and he says that the Medina will be batel through Mashiach Tidkenu. When Mashiach comes, he'll be mevatel the Medina. So, here's what I asked then. First of all, when Mashiach comes, Mashiach can't come till the Medina is gone. So you hear the problem here. Mashiach can't come till the Medina is gone, but how's the Medina going to go away? Only from Mashiach. So Mashiach has to come, be mevatel the Medina, but Mashiach can't come. So how do you get off the ground?
That's right.
This is the problem I had with it. So then, when we learned it, mitoich adoichak, I had no other answer. I said maybe the Rebbe was chayzer. I found one of the divriyos was written in 1956 before Vayol Moshe. So I said, well, maybe then he held it was Mashiach, but later on in '59 when he wrote Vayol Moshe, then he said, okay, Mashiach can't do it because he can't come, so therefore it must be koach milmala, some other power of Hashem. But chayr, that's not a good answer, because if you look around, you see the different divrei yoels are not all written in '56. There's a few of them. There's a divrei yoel Parshas Boy, a divrei yoel Parshas Balak. There's a bunch of divrei yoels. I believe Parshas. I can't remember what it is now, but there's a few divrei yoels. So the question is, and even in the Dibras Kodesh from Tafshin Chav Zayin, which is for sure after Vayol Moshe, which is on the same year as he wrote this sefer, there he also says Mashiach will be Vatal Medina.
Chidush Torah or something?
It's called Dibras Kodesh.
But what's Chidush Torah?
Chidush Torah is I think it's from different years. I don't know what the difference is, but some of them are from the 50s, some of them are from the 60s. But the point is that you can't say my teretz. So I'm leaving with the tzarech. Now here's the thing: you have to say that maybe Mashiach coming will be two stages. There's Bias HaMashiach, the appearance of Mashiach. Like the Rebbe says in Vayol Moshe Siman Mem, that when Mashiach is going to come, even if the Yidden don't do tshuva, but the geula will only happen with tshuva. It says, Ein Yisrael Nigalim Ela b'tshuva. So it means Mashiach might come before they do tshuva, but then when they do tshuva, then he'll do the geula. So same thing over here. There could be two stages in Bias HaMashiach. First, Mashiach will come to be Mevatel the Medina, but then he won't actually do the geula until the Medina is gone. That's what you have to say to answer up that stira. Because we'll say the Rebbe in Vayol Moshe also meant Mashiach. Mashiach can't come. The answer is he'll come to be Mevatel it. The only question I have is then, if Mashiach can't come until Medina is batel, but you're seeing that he's the one to be Mevatel it, he could come. So in what way is the Medina holding up Bias HaMashiach? You hear what I'm asking now? Mm-hmm. That's a different question. How is the Medina stopping Mashiach from coming? Because Mashiach can't come while there's a state, because Ein Ben David Ba, but if Ben David is the one to be Mevatel it, he could come. He could come and be Mevatel it. So how is the Medina stopping him from coming? So that kasha I'm bleiben tzarchian right now. And then the other kasha that people ask is that in this sefer al Gula, in two places, we just saw right here one of them. He says that the United Nations is going to take care of the problem, and in Siman Mem Dalet, he's saying United Nations. So why did the Rebbe in Vayol Moshe not say the United Nations? You hear?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So on that, the teretz has to be that he's saying if the Zionists would let the United Nations, if the Zionists would have a little seichel and they would value Jewish lives, they would call on the United Nations to help them. But since they're not going to do that, mm-hmm. We know, you and I, everybody knows that the Zionists are not going to call the United Nations. That's the last thing they're going to do. So the United Nations helped them in '47. They're grateful for that. But after that, the United Nations is in the garbage. So they're not going to call them. So you know that the Medina is only going to be bottled through Eisa Koyach Mumala. The other thing I always add on about this Koyach Mumala thing is that today we see what the Koyach Mumala is. Hashem is preparing the solution to the Medina by the demographic solution. Everybody knows that pretty soon the Arabs are going to outnumber the Zionists. So anyway, let's go on. So the other thing that I wanted to say over here is on this thing the Rebbe says at Taina that even if you're a Zionist, but one Jewish life is for sure worth more than the state. Yeah? So Rabbi Yashaber Solovechik, they say in the Nefesh Rav, by his Talmud, hershel schacter, he brings that he tried to answer this kasha. He said, Satmar Rebbe L'choyer has a good point. Even if you're going to be a Zionist, but Jewish life is more important than the Medina, right? So what's the pshat? So he said, listen what he said. He said that there's a din that you can be Mechal Shabbos, and Shin Vav, the Ramah brings, you can be Mechal Shabbos to save someone from Shmad. So he says, saving from Shmad has a din of Hatzalah Nefashis. So Mimela, if Shmad has a din of Hatzalas Nefashis, so then you could put someone in a suffix sakana to save someone from a badai sakana. According to some Rishonim, if you see someone drowning, and they're for sure going to drown if you don't save them, and you have a suffix if you can save them, and if you don't save them, you might drown yourself. You're not sure if you know how to swim. So you can jump in to save the guy from drowning, even though your life will be put at stake. Or like an epidemic is a good example of that. Reb Chaim, they say Reb Chaim used to go during the epidemic and try to save people's lives, even though his own life would be in danger. So Reb Chaim Brisker, yeah. So Yeshber is anecdote of Reb Chaim Brisker. So he said, you see that you could put yourself in a suffix sakana. The Israeli soldiers could go to war, put themselves in a suffix sakana, save people from Shmad. How is the Medina saving people from Shmad? Sounds like the exact opposite of what we know. So he says because American non-frum Jews, they stay in touch with Judaism through Zionism. Saying like every secular, and back then at least maybe it was a little bit true, secular American Jews they love Zionism, they love the state, so that keeps them Jewish. So according to him, you're saving them from being off the derech and ganzen. Now we see what
time. But Rebbe said it's a Jewish bad. Anyway, so you could say the same. That's why I'm saying that. But Victor Miller said.
But in these times, we see that really the opposite. The more non-religious a Jew is in America, the more he's anti-Zionist. You see, the Reform has a big problem with it now. A lot of their people are now anti-Zionist. They don't like the prayer for the state. They don't like all this stuff, the Israeli flag. When they take them on the birthright tours, they jump off the bus and they go to the Palestinians. So,
they did, yeah.
Yeah. So basically, the point is that it's the other way around. The secular Jews in America don't identify with Zionism at all anymore. So, and the old ones that Reb Solovechik is talking about, they're old, they're dying out. So that's not really the future of Yiddishkeit. So things are kind of turned upside down today. Anyway, you just see a bunch of very interesting creative svaras that he came up with to answer up the Satmar Rebbe. You see, he considered the Satmar Rebbe's kasha a very strong challenge. Now, and by the way, they say Rebbe Shaber said when the Satmar Rebbe said his Shal Shudas Torahs against the 67 war that made up this sefer, he said that when the Satmar Rebbe came to America, they asked him, what do you think of the Rebbe now? Because everyone was yelling at him about this. So he said, when the Rebbe came to America, everybody here became more frum, including myself.
So yeah, you said that in your book.
In the book, yeah. Anyway, so let's go on. I'm going to speak later on about whether they saved anybody during the war. Even according to them, that they want the state to exist. Even there's no reason for them to go so extreme and go fight with the nations of the world. This causes terrible things to happen, causes the death of Jews. We learned from Yaakov Avinu's example. That we know Yaakov prepared a gift, and he prepared with a tefillah, and he prepared with war. The Ramban says, this is a lesson to the future. Everything that happened to Yaakov Avinu with Esav, it will happen to Yaakov Avinu's sons, his children, his descendants, together with the
Maybe tell me Mark
We have to follow the example of Yaakov Avinu. We have to prepare ourselves for the same things that he prepared himself for. We have to do the same things. Now the Ramban explains. Okay, yeah, that's the same thing today. And gifts, which is also the same today. Now he says, I'm sorry,
where is it?
I'm at the bottom of page Yud, going on to page Aleph.
Drone is a Greek word.
Yeah, okay.
You know, like Theodore Herzl means Theodore means like gift of God.
Yeah, okay. Ulehatzala b'derech milchama livroyach ulinatzel. He says to save ourselves with war, to flee and take refuge. Ad kan l'shoinai. So you always have the question how to read this Ramban. Where's the comma? It says lahatzala b'derech milchama, comma, meaning to fight a war, and or livroyach ulinatzel. Or is it lahatzala b'derech milchama, colon, meaning what's milchama today mean? Today milchama just means livroyach ulinatzel. That was always my suffix how to read the Ramban. But let's see how the Rebbe reads it now. Hinei, tira b'masha kasev she'af be'es ha'achreach. Even at the time when it's necessary, she'iyeh b'derech milchama, that you have to fight a war, siyem, the Ramban finishes off, livrayach u'linatzel. To say to run away and take refuge. Why? The chol titzdeki, the f shalasoy shaloi lilchaim. Any methods or approaches that you could do not to fight. Any way you could get out of fighting, afal yidei bricha, even if it means running away, mechuyev lasois. It's better to run away. That's the best survival technique for a Jew. Zulas b'she'iyav shebini nacher, unless it's impossible in any other way. The way he's learning the Ramban is he's learning lahatzala b'derech milchama. I guess he's learning colon livroyach linatzel, that milchama means today. Be'ikr it means livroyach linatzel, but he's leaving open the possibility that sometimes it might be necessary to fight. And we'll see more about this later. That the Rebbe really did hold that there are times when you have to fight in self-defense. Okay, Yaakov Avinu bevadai haya bekoichay lahafil es Esav anashav. Yaakov Avinu had the ability to win against Esav. V'harbi yoyster mizeh asta nisim and niflois. He won other battles with nisim and niflois. He won Shechem. His sons beat Shimon and Levi beat Shechem. Right? Afa pichein hirba b'hishtachavayos v'doyer and Esav. He instead.
It was wrong for going to Shechem. No,
it was what?
He was wrong.
It was wrong, but just showing that they were able to do it. They were able to do it. But he didn't use that method. He could have used it, but he didn't. He did bowing down and scraping by Esav's feet, v'doyer noisav, and sending out gifts. He wanted to turn over Esav's heart, that he shouldn't be angry, so that he shouldn't have a war. To teach us the way for the future that we should follow. But the Zionists, they do the exact opposite. They completely ignore this example of Esav, of Yaakov and Esav, and they fight against the Umos as like a lechatchila. That's what they want to do. They're more interested in war than they are in reconciliation. Umafkirim damam shel Yisrael, and they like to go and sacrifice Jewish blood. It's interesting. Yaakov Shapira said, one of his shiurim also, he said that the pshat and the Zionists is that they're like the Rambam. The Rambam says when you want to get away from a midah ra, you go to the opposite extreme, right? You go to the opposite extreme. Let's say you're a big balgaiva, so you go to anava, or let's say you're angry, you go to the opposite of anger all the time, right? Calm and whatever. So the same thing, the Zionists did the opposite. They don't want to be Jews. Like Jabotinsky said, take a Jew and imagine his opposite, that's a Zionist, right? He wanted to be the opposite of a Jew. So because the Zionists were so ashamed of the Galus Yid, and they wanted to do the opposite, that's why they became people that B'davka they look for war. Not just that they sometimes fight war. Yeah, all countries once in a while will fight a war. But the point is, the Zionists, they've had like 10 wars since they started. How did that happen? Because they're constantly looking for war. Especially in the 67 war, they had opportunities to make peace. The Americans told them that they have no evidence that the Egyptians are about to attack. Right?
They were also busy in Yemen. They were busy fighting a civil war in Yemen, the Egyptians.
Yeah,
the Yemeni civil war.
There was no proof, and still the Zionists wanted a war. Okay, and they made a whole tumult as if it's a danger, as if the Egyptians are about to attack, and if they're going to destroy the whole Eretz Yisrael and all the Jews and everything. They made it all like, extreme, just to make it look like they had a right to go and preemptively attack. He says before this, the Zionists have a history of being mafkir Jewish blood. He says what happened? They made Hitler angry. It says they declared war, right? It says the Jews boycott.
Judea declares war on Germany.
Right, exactly.
The Daily Express, not the Daily Express.
Daily Express. The Nishma Koiloi Oz Beradio. So Hitler spoke on the radio. She'amar HaYehudim Archu Negdoi Milchama. He says the Jews have declared war on me. Al Kain and Elohem. I will answer them. I will answer them back. This is what he did. Right away, he started killing Jews. What does it mean he killed Jews? In 1933, did the Nazis kill any Jews? I mean, they did take all the Jews out of their positions in the high positions in Germany. And it's true they made the Nuremberg laws and all that kind of stuff, but did they actually kill anyone at that point? You've got to research it. I mean, there were Nazi bullies who were going around and sometimes beating up Jews. It's true.
Brown shirts?
Kristallnacht was in 1938, so that was a few years later. Anyway, EF Shalahavin. So now, going back on the Zionists to declare war, EF Shalahavin, Ha'ech Efshar Achzarius Noira Kolkach. How could there be such a cruelty to say such a thing? B'yoidam shechelet gadol miklal Yisrael. They knew that a large proportion of Klal Yisrael was tachas yadai, was under Hitler, or under the European countries that he was about to conquer. V'heim lo yuchlu lasos b'zeh mehuma. They have no way to save them. So these people were sitting in safety in England or in America and declaring war on Hitler, and at the same time, the people that stood to lose from this, they couldn't do anything to save them. How could they be so cruel and throw Jewish blood and just throw it away like that? They did many other things like this. They caused Jews to get killed. Some of them brought down in the Sefer Harav Hagoyin HaChasid HaManoyach, that he was nifter already by that time. Michal Doyev Olav Shalom. He was a very good friend of the Rebbe, and he explains how the Zionists could have saved people in Europe and they didn't want to. So he says, Gam.
And he also writes Hitler banged his head against the wall.
Or he bit the carpet, fell down on the ground, foamed in the mouth.
Now I'll teach them. Anyway,
Gam Haman Rasha, Terem Shekine Boy Mordechai, Lo Yasem Uma. See, so even Haman Rasha didn't want to kill Jews until Mordechai made him angry. It was only because Mordechai refused to bow down to Haman that Haman started the whole process. El Shekina, so Mordechai was bad, right? It's the same as the Zionists. So he says, no. El Shekinas Mordechai Hai Min Hashamayim Kanoida. Mordechai was a good reason why he did it. It was Min Hashamayim to cause the Jews to do tshuva, maybe, or it was because Mordechai had reasons. It says Mordechai didn't want to do it because there was an avodah zarah hanging around Haman's neck, or maybe Haman himself was an avodah zarah, or maybe he was from Shevet Binyamin. There's different reasons Chazal give. But these Zionists, shemachmas azusam v'chutzpasam, because they're so brazen, misgarim be'umois harashayim. They go and they start up with the Arab nations. Hema hagruim shebegruim hagarmim saras mavhilois al Yisrael. They're the worst. They're the ones who are causing all the terrible things. Unahirna oid b'tchilas hazman kasher niyasa oisa avia avoisa tuma shalat zionis. That when the beginning, the founder of Zionism, Herzl, when he started, Amru was called Gedolei Ador. The Gedolei Ador said, "She'im chas v'shalom yala b'yadam," that if they do succeed in making Eza Malucha, any kind of state, Ein l'shayir goydel atzaras on the roy sheyitzmach b'zeh. There's no way to estimate how much bad could come out of that.
That's what the Rebbe Frackenental and does he want to make like a kinnutz?
That's what who?
The Frackenental, what's his name? They want to make some kind of kinnutz to ban them, like the Kusim.
Oh yeah, the Rabbi Shul Leib Diskin.
You know the Rebbe Frackenental, Braverman?
I don't know. Rabbi Braverman, Rabbi Zerach Braverman, yeah. Anyway, I had brought here, I think the Rebbe is referring to this letter. This we have in the Rabbi Speak Out. It says, the Belz the Rebbe, Rabbi Sachar Doev. He said, but it could be that before the arrival of Mashiach, the the Sultan's efforts will succeed and the wicked will get a state in the land of Israel. Therefore, there's an obligation on every Jew who
The Rashab said just the opposite. They won't succeed.
Who said that?
Rashab said the opposite. They won't succeed.
Rashab, yeah.
Rashab.
The Rashab said they won't succeed. No, but the Rashab also wrote. He said even im yala biyadam.
But he said they won't succeed, but they did succeed.
Yeah. Well, I don't remember. He said they don't. He said they.
Yeah, look it up. It's famous.
Okay. I thought he said im yala biyadam. Even if he would be able to do it, we still shouldn't follow it.
Right.
Anyway, but the Belzer Rebbe says like this: it could happen that they'll succeed. Therefore, there's an obligation on every Jew who must leave his home to move to America or somewhere else, but not to the land of Israel. Meaning, if you're leaving Europe, Belzer Rebbe was in the 20s. He was speaking before, or even before that. So he said, if you're going to leave Europe, don't go there to Israel. Go to America, but not to the land of Israel under the state of these wicked men, because their state would be a great danger to every Jew's body and soul. This is a psak from the Belzer Rebbe. It's amazing. The Belzer Rebbe, Rabbi Yisachar Doiv, paskin not to live in the state of Israel, right? Farish. Amazing. The Belzer Chassidim have to look at this, right?
And he was against the good also.
Yeah. But the point is, yeah.
Just like you said, they have an answer for everything.
So, yeah. So the Belzer Rebbe said that if you're going to leave Europe, you should not go there because it will cause tzaras. Yeah. V'yesh al zeh gam harbe michtavim migdolei ador shahayu az bismanahu. That there's many letters of the Gedolei Dor that were in that time. You know, Baruch Ber also said the Zionists are chashiv, they're roidfim on Klal Yisrael. This famous quote, Baruch Ber said, "If you say this in my name, you're a roidif on me."
What?
If you say over that I said the Zionists are roidfim, then you're a roidif on me.
Because you be chasid on Resicha?
Yeah. Anyway, and that's what happened. They made a state and they brought tzaras on Klal Yisrael. How long are we going to be tripped up by this state? Shem Yerachim Mimheira. Gam bekibush Sinai, hisgaru al loy davar. It says by the other war that they fought in 56, when they conquered the Sinai campaign, hisgaru al loy davar. They started the war for no reason. The garmu bazet tzaras rabbis. Sha'ad oz loy haya. He says they caused terrible things to happen. Why? Because sha'ad oz loy haya chaster me'uma liYisrael ba'osin hamedinos. He said they caused danger for the Jews living in Egypt, because until then there was a large Sephardi community living in Egypt,
right.
And they had no problems. They lived in peace. They lived a good life. They had everything. But after they attacked Egypt in Sinai, in the Sinai campaign, then the conditions became worse, and those Jews had to leave Egypt. So they had a terrible result of this war. That this first war in 56 was really the root cause of the 67 war. Why? That the reason for the war of the 67 war was all over the Straits of Tiran, right? That the Egyptians blocked off the straits. He says, "Shekavshu bekibush Sinai v'lo yiratzu levater al zeh." That the Israelis conquered the Sinai Peninsula and they took the rights of passage through the Straits of Tiran, so the Israeli shipping could go to the Indian Ocean, right? And then they had to go back. America and Russia told them they have to go back, right? The UN condemned the whole attack, and they had to leave behind everything that they conquered, but they didn't want to be mevater on the rights to go through the Straits of Tiran. So what happened? They put the UN expedition forces there to block the straits, so the Egyptians shouldn't have the right to stop shipping. And now, this right of the Israelis to use the straits made the Arabs angry, and eventually Nasser came and expelled the UN forces and put his own forces there and blocked the straits, and that was the reason for the war. So basically, you can trace back the 67 war to the 56 war. So now it's kind of ridiculous. People think that the whole 67 war was Hatzalah and they saved the whole Jewish people from destruction. It was danger and everyone was dying. It's not true at all. It's all over the water. The whole thing that was fought over was whether they have a right to use the straits. He's using this whole thing, and he's blinding the eyes of Jews in the world. There's many Jews who think they thought it was an important war. They had to fight it. They thought the Arabs are coming to kill every single Jew. It's not true at all. The Samach Mem is confusing people, and they're not looking at the history behind it. He borrows the lashon of Rosh Hashanah. The Gemara says that on Sukkot, Hashem judges for the water. So the same thing, they were nidoin, they were fighting over the water. And when they continued to debate over it and fight over it, that's when the rhetoric escalated and Nasser began talking of a general Arab-Israeli war. But all the other nations of the world said no. They shouldn't rush into it. There's hope to make peace and solve the problem by negotiation, diplomacy. So therefore, if the Israelis would have given up the rights to that water, to that straits, then the whole storm would have become nothing. Nasser would not have any reason to even be angry anymore. Is it possible to think that just for that water, should the Jewish blood be spilled like water? He's hitting them really stark right now. He's saying, before I said, first of all, you're not allowed to have any state. Second of all, anti-religious state. Third of all, even if you hold the state, you can't give up one Jewish life to save the state. Better to give up the state than just give up a Jewish life. Okay, but now he's saying, I'll give you even that. Let's say, for example, you're solovechik. He comes up with a heter, yeah, you're allowed to have a state, and you're allowed to give up a life for the state. Fine. But for water, for a right to use the Straits of Tiran, you're allowed to give up Jewish lives? Are you talking? Okay. Now, just to see something interesting, just some background about the war. I brought down, these pages are from the siege. They originally wanted to make a preemptive attack, but they needed American permission. Ibn, the ambassador.
That's Colonel Cruiser Bryant?
Yeah. So Ibn held that it was better to do it with American permission.
Beryl Wine quotes that.
What'd you say?
Beryl Wine quotes that book.
Yeah. He's pro-Israeli, so I want to bring him to show that this is what he says. It's just objective.
That's why Beryl Wine quotes him.
I know, but I'm just saying, like, you see, even from his point of view, he's saying clearly that when they went to do the war, they could have done it on their own, but they would have had America angry at them, and they were afraid they would have to give up whatever they conquered, just like they gave it up in '56. So they wanted the Americans to agree. So they went to Johnson, and they went to the Secretary of State, Dean Rusk, and they wanted them to give the green light. So originally, they said...
How come Satmar Rebbe doesn't talk about the U.S.'s liberty? He didn't know.
Yeah, I don't know. So the first thing that they got from the Americans was, yes, the Americans are in favor of the right of passage through the straits. And Nasser closed the straits, and we're against that. Yes, they're on the Israeli side. But the question was that the international community, maybe they could put together a UN force of ships to open the straits. So it says, Johnson talked of an international naval escort to be set up by the maritime powers which would reopen the straits. So Johnson didn't want to have a war. He said, let's try to solve the problem with an international force. So, and the famous word Johnson said was, Israel will not be alone
unless they want to be,
unless it decides to go alone. May 26th. By the way, the war was June 5th, so this is like 10 days before the war. So they didn't start because they didn't want to do it without American permission. But by May 31st already, the Dean Rusk said the United States is not at this time planning any separate military activity in the Middle East, only within the framework of the United Nations. And since the United Nations was not going to put together any such naval escort, therefore Rusk said, someone asked the question, is it okay for the Israelis to start an attack? So Russ said, I don't think it's in our business to restrain anyone. So that was the key words, and at that point they realized, yeah, we can do our preemptive attack. Now in the book 6 Days of War by Michael Oren, he says an interesting thing here. He says, at his next round of talks with Defense Secretary Robert McNamara and General Earl G. Wheeler, the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, Eben again played down his government's instructions. He listened as Wheeler and McNamara explained how the IDF would win the war in 2 weeks, even if attacked on 3 fronts simultaneously, 1 week if Israel shot first. In his training, motivation, and communication, Israel is vastly superior to its foes and had nothing to fear. Then he adds on, if Israeli intelligence has information on Egyptian attack plans, it had better reveal its sources, the Americans said, otherwise it had no basis for preemptive action. So the reason why the Americans were against preemptive action is because they said, look, they're going to win anyway, the Zionists. They're going to win either way. The question is, they're going to win faster with less casualties if they fight first, right? But if they don't fight first, if they let the Egyptians attack first, then it's going to take a little longer. So they said that there's no justification for a preemptive strike unless you know that the Egyptians are planning to strike. So they said, where's your intelligence? Where's your evidence that they're planning to strike? And in fact, there was no evidence. They weren't planning to strike. Nasser was just bluffing. So that's really the story of things. The Israelis wanted a quick war. They wanted to win decisively, and they wanted to make it easier for themselves. But really, they didn't have to fight any war. If they would have waited for Nasser to attack, no attack would ever have come. So that's really what he's referring to here. That you're not going to make a war just over water. Kind of svar is that. Okay, now the aflafi svarasam hatmeya. Even according to the Zionists' opinion, she'amru bazeh she'ein laharich b'divrei hevleim. That we said we don't want to speak too much about them. Ki al kapanim zeh vaday she'al smach svara ein lishpoich damim shel Yisrael. So basically, he's saying even if you're going to say that for a state you could say give up Jewish lives, which is like JB said, but he's saying over here it's just for water. Of course, no one's going to say bim shayfich dam. They at least should have tried first, even if they're going to give up lives for water. But they should at least try levater al kacha linatam min al-milchama. Even if they should try to reconcile themselves, to give up something in order to save from the war. Even if it was a possibility that they could save themselves from the war. Should try to do anything possible not to give up lives. He says, I don't have any doubts. He said, even if you would have a doubt whether this could have saved the situation, you should do it. But I don't have any doubts. I know for sure it would have worked. There are proofs that have no doubt about them. If they would have given up the rights to the straits, there would not have been a war. I don't want to speak about it too much. There's no end to politics, to political talk. And there's no real difference. Everyone agrees that the war started over the water. That they conquered earlier in 56. Poetically, he says the water was the one that started the fire of the war. These are the main meriva, the waters of dispute. These both sides are Rishayim, the Zionists and the Arabs. These, I guess he means the Zionists and their desire for victory, and the Arabs and their desire for killing. And he says, no, both of them have both. Both of them wanted victory, and both of them wanted to kill people. There's no suffix that we have no right to give up any Jewish life for the existence of the state. But besides that, he's saying that it's not the existence of the state that was at stake, it's just the rights to the straits. Okay, Umavur begemara Psachim daf kuf yches bizar amim kravoy sech patzu. It says he scattered nations. They wanted war. Mi gara lahem liYisrael sheis paz rubeinu umois. Who caused the Jews to be scattered among the nations? Kravoy shahayu chafetzim bohem. It's only the wars that they wanted. The cost of Sham. Hamarsha Zal, Marsha explains, Pirush Rashi, B'Sefer Tehillim, Lashon Kravos and Mulchamas. Kravos means war. Dahainu b'Mikdash Rishon, in the first temple period, Ilu Hishlimu im Nebuchadnezzar, if they would have made peace like Yirmiyah Navi wanted them to do with Nebuchadnezzar, well, Galu Klal, they wouldn't have gone into exile. V'Yoyster b'Mikdash Sheni, Ilu Sham Pritze Israel Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai, Mulcham Shabador, if the Biryonim would have listened to Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai, they wouldn't have made a war against Rome. And they would have made peace with Titus. Like Galu, they wouldn't have gone into Galus. But the Rishaim, the Biryonim, wanted only war. They do not want peace. Ad kan l'shoinai. So he's saying the same thing applies today. That
who in the first place of Mikdash wanted to war with?
I guess Tzidkiyahu. Tzidkiyahu didn't want to give in to Nebuchadnezzar.
And Yoshia also, right? Yoshia.
That's before.
That was before. But still, he was told not to.
Yeah, well, yeah, that was like a side war. It was a war between Egypt and someone else. He intervened in the war. But here it's an actual attack on Yerushalayim from Nebuchadnezzar. And Yirmiyah Navi said the Das Torah is right now to give in. And they didn't want to give in. So he says, so the Sionim today are the modern day Biryonim. They're the ones who don't want to give up. They want to fight wars and risk Jewish lives in order to achieve the independence. But he says, they're even more than the Biryonim. They do much more than them. Those are the people that caused this terrible fire of this war. This war that caused so many Jewish lives to be lost. 800 Jewish lives, I think, were lost in this 67 war. But you have to take into account, for years afterwards, all the terrorism, first of all, the 73 war was a result of the 67 war. Egypt wanting back what they conquered. And also, it's all the terrorism going from then until now, in all the West Bank issues that are existing, is all based on this war. These Sionim are the ones who caused this fire. And the whole blame is on their shoulders. Okay, we'll stop here.